Welcome to the Tesla Economist. Please hit the thumbs up and remember to subscribe. You can also follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon. In a recent tweet, Elon Musk just announced, dry electrode is a key piece, one of many pieces, of the puzzle for lowering cost of lithium batteries. That said, it has required an immense amount of engineering to take Maxwell's proof of concept to high quality, volume production, and was still not quite done. It was always going to be the dry slurry technique that was going to cause the most delays with the 4680 production line, and this was what I had inferred from the Q1 earnings call too. Firstly, I do appreciate Elon keeping us updated. In my opinion, perfecting this process is the key to growth for this company. It is arguably the single most important part of the business that needs to be sorted. It is what will be responsible for so much less floor space required in making batteries, thus smaller factories required for equal output, giving Tesla a tremendous competitive advantage over every other battery factory. Yes, tabless is brilliant too, and allows Tesla to increase the velocity of the production line, but the dry electrode process simply removes so much of the production line, along with significantly less capital required. But from this tweet, it does sound like they're doing absolutely everything they possibly can in order to sort it, as I think it really is the number one barrier right now for this company getting through the next stage. Just because we haven't really heard overly too much about the 4680 batteries doesn't mean Tesla aren't working around the clock to perfect the production process as much as possible. Now, obviously I cannot offer you financial advice. This is not something I have to say, but it's something that is absolutely true, as I have no idea as to what your financial situation is. But as far as Tesla investment advice, in my opinion, on however much weight you wish to place on that, once Tesla sort out their dry electrode process, then there's no stopping them. Tesla really appear to be attempting to do everything they say they can. Some of these timelines are just incredibly hard to predict though. It's a new industry with products, tools, equipment, and machines that haven't even been invented yet. They're having to be invented along the way. Oh, but of course, if you're a legacy auto company, then somehow you have no problem estimating timelines of making 1 million EVs by 2025, or what would be about 3 times faster than Tesla managed to scale. In Elon's tweet, he expresses the word immense amount of engineering. This coming from the top engineering company in the world, with resources from the top rocket company in the world, I would say, therefore, immense carries a lot of weight in this context. Elon says, not quite there yet, implying possibly they nearly are, and that will eventually happen, possibly not that far off, and this is to reach the level of high quality volume production. We also don't know what is meant by not quite done. Does it mean that possibly there is human intervention required currently for the dry electrode process, which is simply slowing down mass scale production by too much to get the numbers we really require? In other words, we don't quite know as to what level the 4680s are currently produced and at what speed. This really could be a hurdle to get past before Tesla's stock price sets off again. But really, even if it took 2 more years to do, then sure, that may set back Tesla by 2 years in some areas, but the fact it is possible and Tesla can achieve it whenever it is achieved will mean that Tesla has a solid path to a $3 to $5 trillion valuation. I'm just trying to put into perspective what kind of breakthrough this achievement means for the company, assuming no one else managed to achieve something similar before Tesla. On the other side, you have to think, if it's this hard for Tesla, and all their engineers and unlimited capital, most experience, and the most to benefit from it, then how is anyone else going to come close? It's highly possible right now CATL or SK Innovation may perhaps be doing their own R&D on how to remove the wet slurry electrode process. It doesn't take a genius to realize truly just what an advantage it is in manufacturing, but can they achieve it is a different question. Even if they were able to, then they would still likely have years until they were able to scale. These critical years give Tesla that much more time to gain a lead in EVs and batteries, and that's if these other manufacturers can do it. LG and Panasonic will likely be making 4680 batteries for Tesla. Therefore, wouldn't that mean they have all the engineering know-how on how to create their own production line of similar batteries? Well, Tesla had to purchase Maxwell Technologies for this technique, which was not cheap. It would appear Tesla were not actually interested in Maxwell's hypercapacitors, as Tesla are now selling Maxwell again. So we're back to the dilemma of being a Tesla shareholder. Do we prefer that Tesla keep all the technology for themselves, or would we rather the technology was shared and it further accelerated the transition to clean energy? I guess the question is, will Tesla open the patent for dry electrode process? It sounds like the entire process would be difficult to replicate anyway, perhaps even with a patent. And this is just one element of the magic in the 4680 battery. To replicate it all would be exceedingly difficult. It's funny, when I first invested in Tesla, they didn't really have their own battery. It was Panasonic. In other words, Tesla have now created their biggest competitive advantage. Well, at least once this process is completed. It means that the battery costs for Tesla are significantly less than anyone else's. Seeming as Tesla's demand is so strong, it's unlikely that this saving will be passed on to the consumer. Instead, it's more likely to just accumulate into larger profit margins for Tesla, giving them more capital to reinvest into the business and products. Again, further improving the products and taking advantage of more economies of scale. You see, whilst the likes of the Chinese EVs are busy trying to save cost by reducing margins, they make less profit, leaving less money for capital to invest in the business. Capital that Tesla are able to use not just to cut costs, but also to add value to the actual product. i.e., Tesla end up making a more valuable product for less money, making it much harder for some Chinese EVs to compete. The dry slurry technique is a huge part of why the 4680 is such a big deal. For those of you who were around at the time Tesla purchased Maxwell Technologies, it was exciting to first find out that Tesla were even more likely to be making their own batteries, and the fact that they were using the dry electrode process was even more exciting. But here we are, even still today, waiting to see if Tesla will achieve this. It's hard to believe, but Battery Day hasn't even been a year ago, yet so much has happened since. We've seen and heard so many ideas, but all resting on the success of this last element. Once achieved, we assume that the battery lines can presumably be completed in Texas and Berlin. In reality, the 4680 production line didn't really need to be perfected until these factories started ramping up. It sounds like Tesla are producing enough 4680 batteries for Berlin from Cato Road until the factory starts ramping, by which time we hope it's all sorted. Given that, then Tesla probably have until about the end of the year to get this sorted. Elon's tweet doesn't actually indicate whether or not they are even behind schedule. Presumably, the real schedule is having the 4680 lines ready by the time these new factories ramp up. Or else, for the time being, they may only be limited to whatever 4680 batteries Tesla can produce at a Cato Road facility, significantly holding back the ramping of these factories. But will these factories actually be battery constrained in their ramping up to mass market? It seems fairly certain that both these factories will have a capacity of around at least 1 million units a year. If 60 kilowatt hours was the average battery pack size per vehicle, then that requires 120 gigawatt hours a year of batteries. Tesla's plan for these factories was 100 gigawatt hours, including also what Cato Road produced for next year. Even witnessing how impressive the latest Model Y is ramping up in Shanghai, if Tesla met the 100 gigawatt hour objective for next year, it would look like these factories would not be battery constrained and ramping. I mean, we're talking about 1.6 million EVs potentially from these batteries, assuming all were assigned to autos and not energy. If that was the case, then Tesla's growth for next year would be well in excess of 100%. Okay, well, I guess this is just another video where I once again explain what a big deal it is to see the 4680 production line complete. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.